What's up, beautiful badass beings? Been a bit since I've shown my mug on here, but feeling a little inspired to just jump on as my beautiful soul sis business partner Sam just did a vulnerable share as well. So feeling called to do the same. She and I hosted our first transformative, we'll say, wellness retreat 2 weeks ago. We're coming up on just 2 weeks now, and she stayed with me up until about a week ago, and so it's been about a week since we have physically parted ways, and damn, are we both navigating a lot of similar internal shifts. A lot of the same core wounds are resurfacing, and a lot of similar, we'll say, external triggers are happening, which is beautiful because that's how this works, and we know that. But I personally am feeling like a very strong split again in the earths, right? Which is always happening. And all that really means is, we're all these multi-dimensional badass beings jumping around in different dimensions, realities, really just states of awareness and consciousness. It's not a physical split, although externally it can manifest in that way, right? In many ways. I definitely felt this energy super loud when I was still in my wounded marriage, and we were both living in two completely different realities. The earth split was very evident to me at that time. And since exiting that reality and co-creating all these new realities with different people, well, I'm feeling it again. And that's just what happens as we continue to evolve, right? It's, as I say all the time, it's not personal, it's vibrational, it's all frequencies. And so it's not personal, although personally, a lot of wounds come up in the process, right? And one of the things that Sam and I did on our retreat to connect with our inner child and had everybody do was paint rocks. And we painted a light rock and a shadow rock. And essentially the light rock represented, something positive in our life. And we placed those rocks around a tree that we planted on site here. And then our shadow rock was to represent a shadow aspect of us, whether that be a fear, a limiting belief, just an old story that we're ready to release. And inner and understand that when you're ready to release something, that energy is going to get really effing loud in your life. That's what happens when we are truly ready to release something or someone or a situation, right? That energy starts to get really prevalent and loud, right? Because we have now told the universe that we're ready to let it go in whatever way that means for us. And so my shadow rock, I painted the words rage and anger. And it was really representative of all of the rage and anger that I feel has been projected onto me from the moment that I entered this game. And for those of you that don't know my full story, watch my YouTube. I entered this realm, we'll say, as a result of a lot of angry energy, and then I don't even really like to say the word victim because my soul knew what it was coming into, but it was on the receiving end of a lot of anger, essentially, when I first joined the game, and has been a very real narrative in a lot of my relationships and life. And so it's also anger has been something within myself that I spent a lot of time suppressing because I had created this negative story about it, that it's bad. And anger is not bad, just like any emotion. It's literally just an emotion. I'll say it becomes sabotaging when we can't acknowledge it within ourselves and allow ourselves to release it. That is when, and that's with any emotion, we tend to become it. And that's when we can unconsciously or even consciously project it to the world around us. So for me, anger and rage have been something I have feared externally and internally. It's something that I feel like I continue to see in external experiences and almost don't know how to navigate it with the external world sometimes, because then I feel like old versions of myself want to like retract and contract back in when I feel like there's anger happening around me or at me. And so I set the intention 2 weeks ago to release this, right, from my life. And I kid you not, even before I threw that rock in, obviously my higher self knew what was going to happen in the retreat and everything. And so things already started shifting for me even right before the retreat. But since the retreat, wowza, a lot of this energy has come up in my life. And it's presented itself with external situations with other people, but also my own internal just awarenesses of kind of realizing that I think I might be a little bit more effed up than I thought from my marriage. And that's not to say I'm in denial of what I went through and leaving and all of that in this last year and a half, what I've gone through. I'm not in denial of the hardships, the challenges that it has created, but also the freedom. But it's like, I just started feeling like this week, like, holy shit, am I more effed up than I realized? Like, and I don't know, I feel like yes and no, right? And even just asking myself that question allows me to have more grace with myself, right? Because, like, of course I am. When I can logically think about what I was in, and this is not me speaking ill about my ex by any means, because I love him. I love everybody. I literally love everybody. But this is just, it is what it is, right? It was a very, very wounded relationship that we co-created together. And so in that, there have been so many limiting beliefs that I've created and grabbed onto. And just a lot of trauma, like a lot of trauma. And a lot of it for me is around the energy of anger and rage, like even more than anger, it's the energy of rage, to be honest. And when I really like go deep within myself, which I do all the time, right? And as I have been for the last 2 weeks, I'm like, what is anger, telling me, right? Like, and I know anger stems from, fear, right? But it stems from like lack of control. And I know something for me, like my whole life, like this fear of not being understood by people, not being heard, people not getting like what I'm saying. That has been a very deep thing for me since I was a kid. And it's been popping up in different fashions this last week. And it's funny because each time it does, I feel like I navigate it a little bit different, a little bit with a little more grace, we'll say, for myself. And then like when I feel like I'm being questioned or challenged or whatever, or just not understood, right? It's like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if people get me or don't get me. Like at the end of the day, it's my truth, it's my story, it's my journey. And I have to remind myself of that, as everyone else's is also their own. And so like, it's just been really interesting to feel all the feels while also observing like how it's coming up, why it's coming up, and can I like navigate it a little bit differently to therein release like another layer of the trauma built around this, right? And so I share all this with you because I'm sure I'm not the only one going through this. I know people that went to our retreat are definitely being affected and shifted. I know people that are connected to us that didn't even go to the retreat are being affected and shifted based on the very deep energy work we all did together. And so like, just know that you're not alone, and that emotions are just that, energy in motion. And if we stop trying to analyze them and fix them and explain them, judge them, whatever, and just like allow them to be, they have a lot of really valuable information to show us about ourselves. And so I'm just feeling my fails, anger being one of them. Super not comfortable for me to deal with, but super important in this next layer of my journey, because I do not want to become the projections that were placed upon me. And now I'll be honest, there's actually a fear coming up for me that I am now going to become the energy I absorbed, even though there is another knowing within me that knows I'm too conscious of an individual for that to actually happen. But I'd be lying if I didn't say it was kind of still a fear, especially as I've seen how my own anger has kind of surfaced the last 2 weeks, and not always proud of how I've handled it, but at the same time, I'm not sorry too, because I feel like when I have expressed it, it was actually in a very warranted time and place, and maybe still not verbally expressed. Oh no, you know what? It was verbally expressed the way it needed to be in that moment, right? And in those moments. But it's a fine line between holding ourselves accountable and also not like placing all these weird standards around our humanness and expectations. And that's where I find I'm still balancing a lot, is my own personal accountability, but then also like not owning shit that's not mine to own, right? Like, I'm literally not responsible for how other people feel, and vice versa. No one is responsible for how I feel. We might be catalysts in each other's journeys, and we may trigger things within each other, individuals, people in our lives, and vice versa, but we're not responsible for making anyone feel a certain way, which also means we cannot blame other people for making us feel a certain way. We are all running around with all of these emotions all the time, and we've just gotten really good at distracting and numbing out and denying them. But at the end of the day, we're all humans in skin suits running around with the same emotions, right? That are byproducts of maybe different life experiences, but we're all feeling a lot of the same things. And so none of us is responsible for making another person feel something. That includes happiness, right? And that's why a lot of codependent relationships happen, because we're constantly seeking happiness or fulfillment from another individual. And let me tell you, it does not work. That does not work, or it doesn't work long, or it can work for a long time, but just not in the most healthy way, we'll say. So the good news is we're not responsible for people's emotions, nor is anybody responsible for ours. The fun news is that we are all catalysts of that for each other. And so when we can start to see that and not blame other people for how we're feeling, and see the value in the energetic exchange and what it's showing us about us, that's how we move shit through us. And that's how I've grown, honestly. That's how I am where I am in this now moment. And it's not to say that I have it all figured out, because holy shit, I do not. But every now moment of every day, I'm sort of figuring more out about myself. And how do I do that? I use my external world as my mirror, and everybody's my teacher. So thank you to everyone who's triggered me in the last couple weeks. I appreciate you being part of my journey in that way, because I also know I'm that in your lives as well. So we're all just spirits being humans, and the more we can have compassion for ourselves in these challenging moments, the more we can have compassion for other people and grace for where other people are at, even though we may not fully inner, under, or overstand where we're all coming from, right? And the important thing is you understand you. That's it, right? We really have nothing to prove to other people, even though our ego is always going to want to, I won't say always, but there will tend to always be this little voice of the ego that still wants a little bit of validation or understanding from the outside world. And totally normal for us humans, right? But understand, overstand, and understand, it's not necessary, because at the end of all this, it's only you going out with you, and it's your journey. And so yeah, that's pretty much all I've got right now as I continue to process all of these fun energies coming up. Anybody that came to our retreat that might be feeling all this, feel free to reach out to Sam and I, because you are not alone, and we are right there with you, shifting timelines and having all sorts of uncomfortable family interactions, and potentially friendships are shifting, and just like a whole bunch of shit is changing, right? Because we are literally in the middle of human evolution, so it's kind of what's supposed to happen, but doesn't always mean we enjoy it. So just know you're not alone. Sam and I are riding this crazy train with ya, and we love ya. Bye.